Walter Myers lived alone in the mountains of Montana, where spring mornings were so cold and quiet you could hear the snow melting, drop by drop, from the eaves onto the stone porch. His wooden cabin wasn't big, just one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a front porch facing east. But it was filled with memories, sounds, and the silences of a life that had weathered over 70 winters. He used to live there with his one and only wife, Evelyn, who had passed away 6 years ago from a sudden stroke. They had shared 43 years of marriage, not perfect, but sincere, not flashy, but deeply bonded. Walter was never one for sweet words. He had been a carpenter, a man of practical and rugged things, saws, nails, and mud-caked boots. But ever since Evelyn passed, he began doing something no one in the family had expected. Every morning, whether snow fell or the sun beat down, he made 2 cups of coffee. One for himself, one for her. Her cup, always placed on the same old saucer with the blue rim, was set on the worn wooden chair to his left on the porch. The chair had faded with time, but he cleaned it carefully every day. No one was allowed to sit there. No one was allowed to touch her cup. "It's not because she'll come back to drink it," he said quietly. "It's just, I need to keep making it for her. It's a part of me now." Each morning, he sat on the porch, silently watching the sun rise over the mountain peaks. He didn't turn on the TV, didn't listen to the radio. Silence was what he listened to, and in that silence, he remembered the mornings when Evelyn was still alive. Her sitting there, reading, slowly sipping her coffee, sometimes looking up and saying, "You put too much sugar in today." Those little things, so small, were now everything to him. On windy mornings, he still bundled up in thick sweaters and brought out the 2 cups like always. On mornings when his hands trembled and some coffee spilled, he still smiled and said, "Evelyn used to say I was clumsy. Guess I still haven't changed." Some neighbors thought Walter was holding onto the past a little too much. Some suggested he find new joys, travel, meet people, open up. But Walter never argued. He simply replied, "I'm not living in the past. I'm living with it, because I don't think love is something you bury with the one who passed. It still lives, if you remember how to love." Walter didn't build a shrine, didn't cry often, didn't talk much about loneliness. But every morning, through that simple act, he was doing something not everyone at 70 can do. He was holding onto a love that remained unchanged, unweathered by time, unbroken despite loss. At 70, if you can still make coffee for someone who's no longer there, still clean a chair no one sits in, and sit down to feel a love that no longer has a physical form, you're not aging. You're living a deeper kind of life, one shaped by devotion and a heart that has remained whole. And perhaps the greatest triumph of aging is not in how healthy we are or how sharp our memory stays, but in whether our hearts still remember how to feel, to love, and not grow numb, no matter how long the years stretch. Walter didn't need recognition. He just needed one reason each morning to pour another cup of coffee, place it in its familiar spot, and whisper in his heart, "Good morning, my love." Walter didn't just love Evelyn in memory. He loved life itself by continuing to give, quietly, steadily, without asking for anything in return. Every Wednesday and Saturday, he drove his old pickup truck, a 1994 Chevrolet he called his loyal old friend, nearly 40 minutes across 2 small towns to a local church, where he taught art to 12 children in a free community class. No one hired him, no one made him go, and no one paid him, except in hugs, messy, colorful drawings, and laughter that rang like early spring sunshine. He didn't teach like a professional artist, because truthfully, he had never studied art. He just brought along a box of old watercolors, some paper, and more importantly, a patient heart that listened to the little dreams inside each child's mind. The children called him the grandpa who never gets sleepy, because unlike other adults who preached or pushed, Walter just smiled and told stories. Sometimes ridiculous, sometimes silly, but always no one knew that in an age when adults were busy with phones, pressure, and arguments, there was a 70-year-old man quietly sitting in the middle of children's laughter, healing the world a little at a time simply by sitting down, looking directly and listening. That wasn't a job, that was love. That was the gift Walter carried in his heart ever since Evelyn passed, because she had once said, "If one day I'm not here anymore, please love life for me, will you?" And he did that, not through grand gestures, but by showing up when someone needed him, and staying just a little longer, a little more patiently, a little more warmly. At 70, if you can still give your presence, your patience, and your precious time, without expecting anything back, if you can make a child feel heard, or a stranger feel a little less alone, then you're doing something many younger people can't. You're living without closing off, without measuring, without holding back. You're living a life of expansion through the heart, and that is perhaps the most beautiful victory of aging. When you're still a gentle light in a world that so deeply needs those who know how to spread love. If Walter's story made you think about your father, your grandfather, or even your own future, leave a like as a quiet encouragement for all those who are silently standing back up after life's many stumbles. And if you believe there's someone out there, a loved one, a friend, or maybe even yourself someday, who needs to hear this, please share this video. A small story might just touch a tired heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay close to more healing stories like this. Because all of us will grow old, but no one has to grow old alone, as long as love and understanding still exist. After the fall and the long road to healing, many thought Walter would spend the rest of his life in quiet comfort, letting go of new things. But what made him different was just that. He never saw old age as the end, but rather as a new chapter. One crisp autumn morning, he called his granddaughter to ask how to use an iPad. He wanted to learn digital painting. The whole family was surprised, even a bit worried he was pushing himself too much. But Walter just smiled and said, "If the mind is still curious, then the heart is still alive." So every morning, after breakfast and Evelyn's cup of coffee, he sat at his desk with the bright eyes of a child holding a paintbrush for the first time. He learned how to send emails, how to video call, how to explore new tools, not because he needed to keep up with the world, but because he didn't want to shut himself off from it. During a Zoom call with an art teacher from another state, Walter burst into tears when he saw his painting displayed on a classroom wall through the screen. Not because he was praised, but because, after so many years, he felt useful again. A sacred, simple feeling, yet incredibly precious for anyone entering their 70s. And he didn't stop there. Each evening, he wrote a few lines in a personal draft he titled Letters to Evelyn. These words weren't meant to be printed or published, just kept, to hold on to something within him that was still alive, an unfinished dream. Walter hoped that by the time he turned 75, he would drive across America to visit the Grand Canyon, a place he and Evelyn had once promised to stand together at sunset. Evelyn couldn't be there anymore, but he still wanted to fulfill that promise because he believed that some dreams, even late ones, deserve to be kept as a tribute to life. Someone once asked him, Why dream at your age? And Walter answered with a line that left everyone silent. I don't dream to escape reality. I dream so I don't wither. At 70, if you can still learn something new, still want to explore, still dare to hope and step outside your comfort zone, you are not growing old. You are truly living, fully, deeply, and freely. Not limited by time, not imprisoned by the fear of being too late. Because youth is not in the flesh, it lives in the motion of the mind. And Walter, with his silver hair and eyes still as clear as spring water, is proof of this. Those who learn, those who dream, are those walking through old age with a quiet brilliance. He doesn't live to count down the time he has left. He lives to fill each day with awareness, presence, and gratitude. And if you're stepping into that season, or have parents or grandparents who are, please remember. Living long is a blessing, but living deeply is the true celebration. Learn, ask, connect. Even slowly, even clumsily, every small step forward at this age is a victory. Not over others, but over yourself. And if this part resonated with you, here's a gentle call to action you can use to close the video. Backhand index pointing right if you believe that old age is not the end, but simply another form of beginning. Leave a like for Walter. Backhand index pointing right, and if you know someone